Hey guys, ever thought about creating your own podcast? I think Anchor is an excellent resource for us to do that. When I was looking to create a podcast, I was looking for a tool in which I could use that would allow me to record and publish to multiple platforms. And I found that by using Anchor. They have some great tools to use, and when you record and publish, it publishes out to all major publications. So it's really a one-stop shop that allows you to create your own podcast and then publish it out to all various different platforms, which I just love. Check them out. Make sure you go and download the free app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
What you talking about acknowledgement? You cray-cray. Hi guys, this is Ryan Light with BeatAnxiety.me, your host, where we will be going over the struggles of anxiety and learning how to heal the underlying causes. Hey guys, this is Ryan Light with BeatAnxiety.me, and this is podcast episode 3. Looking forward to really getting into this topic today, as it's a topic that's near and dear to my heart. Reason being is because I struggled with this particular topic for just years upon years, and I find that many that struggle with anxiety do struggle with this topic. And what is the topic? The topic is acknowledgement. Acknowledgement is one of those things in which is really, really difficult for us to come to grips with. Reason being, at least for me, what I found was acknowledgement was stating and actually admitting to the fact that I had issues. And I had deep-seated issues that I really didn't want to get into. I really didn't want to talk about. I hid them from friends and family and my spouse, my wife, just a litany of other people, but they were deep-seated. And the art of acknowledgement really surfaces these issues in our life, and I find that a lot of us struggle with acknowledging, and acknowledging it's a power, right? It really gives us a sense of power when we can come to grips with and admit to our struggle. Like for me, I'll lead you down a path here, and I'll tell you a quick story around one of my instances early on in my struggle with anxiety. I just got married. I was in my late 20s, and I remember going to see this movie, and this movie, it wasn't really a bad movie per se. It had Bruce Willis in it, and a couple of other people in it. It was probably in the late 90s. I don't remember the name of the movie, but there was a scene in there that that was kind of unsettling for me. I kind of unsettling feeling about it, and it really sparked an unsettling feeling in me, and it started down a path of really intrusive thoughts, OCD in nature. And what the OCD thoughts were, what the intrusive thoughts were, was it was about a killing or something like that. It had to do something with killing. I think one of the characters in the movie was either a serial killer or he murdered somebody or something like that happened. And I remember distinctly just having this unsettling feeling about that. And then all of a sudden, that thought came to me like, it started like this. It started with, how can someone do that? And I can't believe people do that. And it started with that kind of thought. And then that thought slowly turned into, you're going to do that. Right? So my intrusive thought came to, you're going to do that. And man, I remember when that first happened to me, I crumbled. I absolutely crumbled to the fact that I was capable of doing something like that. what was interesting about that is it went from you can do something like that to you are going to do something like that. So the thought built upon itself, right? I had anxiety about the intrusive thought to begin with, like how can someone do that? To you can do that. Then the anxiety built to you're going to do that. And I remember at this time we were married for about 6 months, and we just had we got pregnant pretty quick. Within a couple of months of being married, we had a baby coming, and that was a stressful time. I was a contractor in a job, and that was a stressful time. And I just got married, and that was a stressful time. And we were living in this dinky apartment, just flat out broke. And that was a stressful time, and cars didn't run, and bills were piling, and I had this new baby coming at me. And then to pile it on was this new intrusive thought of mine. And this new intrusive thought, like I said, went from how can people do it to you can do it to you're going to do it. And I remember that was probably about 6 months into the pregnancy, or 7 months into my wife's pregnancy, and 3 months later we had our son. And this went on for a year. So it built upon that one to the fact that I literally thought every single day, every moment of the day that I could do something like that. I could, and it went from killing somebody to killing my family to killing my son. And what I did was I didn't go near my son. So for the first 7-8 months of his life, I didn't go near him. And what I struggled with was acknowledging that I was having these thoughts, right? Those thoughts are embarrassing. We don't know really where they're from. They're scary, so we don't really want to talk about them. We want to hide them and ignore them and run from them. And during this time, what I did is I got really, really bad with coping mechanisms, unhealthy coping mechanisms. I started to drink more. I started to isolate myself from friends. I started isolating myself from my wife. I started isolating started because I didn't trust myself, right? I didn't trust myself in the fact that I was having these intrusive thoughts. And so that went on for about a year. And finally what I did was I told my wife, I just had a breaking point one day. And I told my wife, I sat her down, I said, listen, I'm having this thought around how I can murder somebody, and how not only how I can murder somebody, but how I'm going to murder you and murder my son. And what was interesting in those months is the thought went from like to murdering my kid to molesting my kid, and how I can't be. So I wouldn't get around him. I wouldn't touch him. I wouldn't hold him. I was just so scared of myself that I just wouldn't do that. And finally I sat her down and I said, her name is Jessica. I said, Jessica, I got something to tell you. I'm really, really struggling with this intrusive thought. And I told her what it was, thinking that I would get like, oh, you're crazy, we need to call the ambulance, or we need to call the cops because you need to be admitted, and you need to go in a psycho ward. And I was scared of her running off with my kid, and so, or just the litany of stuff went through my head. And you guys know when you struggle with anxiety, like all the what ifs start to come into effect. So anyway, I kind of sat her down and I said, hey, listen, this is what's happening, this is what's going on, this is why I've been acting the way I've been acting. This is what I'm struggling with. And her response to me was something I will never forget. She's like, oh, that's not a big deal. Like, you would never do that. And as soon as I could acknowledge that I was struggling, acknowledge that I was fighting these thoughts, acknowledge that I was having these thoughts, the weight on my shoulders was just absolutely released. I mean, it was a phenomenal feeling that just letting that out and being open about it just relieved myself. I didn't have to hide no more. I didn't have to run no more. I didn't have to ignore it no more. I didn't have to do all those things in which I was doing for the past year with that thought. So acknowledgement is a lot like that. Now, granted, this was early in my journey. And well, not really early. This was probably 10 years into my journey. I had kind of general anxiety, but nothing to this point of intrusive thoughts, and a pure OCD bout the way I was having. And so what's interesting about that is I let her know about that, and we kind of walked through it and worked through it, and I saw some counselors and kind of worked through those things. But as I talked about before in my earlier podcast, number 2, is around healing the anxiety. I never really healed it. And so I managed it and learned how to overcome the thoughts and allow it and those types of things, which I'm going to get into in my later podcast. But I had these bouts of anxiety that would keep on coming up. And each time it would come up, I would do the same exact thing. I would struggle with the acknowledgement of it, right? And that acknowledgement was just hindering my healing process, was just stopping me each and every time I would not acknowledge it. It hindered me. So again, it just went on for like, I was good for a little while and then something would pop up, and I was good for a while and something would pop up, and I was good for a while and something would pop up. And each and every time I would not acknowledge what was going on. Because what is acknowledgement? When you really think about acknowledgement is about exposing ourselves, right? It's about being real with what's going on. And it's about really being honest and forthright and being open about what we're struggling with, what we're dealing with, no matter how crazy it is, no matter how absurd it might sound, no matter how intrusive the thoughts might be with ourselves. When we let it out in an open and honest way, it loses its power. And a lot of times with us, what we believe that if we just fight through it and ignore it and hide it and just distract ourselves, that it will go away. And that's not how anxiety works. Anxiety does not work like that. Anxiety only gets more power when we do that. It's interesting in society teaches us got to be a fighter, you got to be strong, man up, woman up. You got kind of like, you have to be this strong individual. And so we do that with the anxiety. And as we do that with the anxiety, what typically happens, at least for me, is it got worse. It didn't get better, it got worse. And that's one of the things that we need to understand about struggling with anxiety. The more we fight it, the more we ignore it, the more we try to distract it, the more that we run from it, the worse it gets. And part of the healing process, at least I coach, is really to acknowledge that we're struggling, acknowledge what's going on. And for me, what that started was really acknowledging the deeper seated issues. It got me starting to understand that these manifestations that I was struggling with, these intrusive thoughts and some of the control issues that I have and the fears that I have, were really deep-seated. There were causes that were manifesting themselves with those outcomes, right? So if I didn't have control, or if I didn't really fear, and fear is a lack of control, and if I didn't have control, well, that was deep-seated and deep-rooted in other causes. And acknowledging allowed me to get real with those things and start really going into the next phase that I'll go into probably in a later podcast, probably my next podcast, is really the acceptance phase. And I'll get into it more as I go through the acceptance phase, because that might be a 2 or 3 podcast episodes on that particular topic, because a lot of people confuse acknowledgement with acceptance. They believe that since they're talking about it, that they're accepting it. And that's a big chasm that most of us get stuck on. Most of us I see people get stuck on is with acknowledging and accepting, because they believe that by acknowledging they are accepting, and that's not true whatsoever. I can say that I can acknowledge that I'm alcoholic, or I can acknowledge that I'm something, but then go off and drink or go off and do something that's unhealthy. I can acknowledge that I want to stop smoking, but then I continue to smoke. So it's one of those things, right? It's different. It's different. I'll get into those differences when I get into the acceptance phase of discovery and how we heal that. So, but I wanted to really preface that if we really want to heal the anxiety in our life, we need to really get real with what's going on and really be real and open to what's going on. And that starts with acknowledgement. The faster we can acknowledge, the faster we can go through the process, the faster we can heal. And really, by not acknowledging, like me, I just held myself captive and hostage all those times. All that time I was held captive, and all that time I was held hostage to my own thoughts, to my own feelings, to my own beliefs, to my own habits. And that was just controlling every facet of my life. So if you struggle with acknowledgement and you struggle in that area, I would really encourage you to either find a trusted friend, find a counselor, find a coach, find someone that you can really reach out to and start to understand what it means to acknowledge. And as you learn to understand what it means to acknowledge, you can begin and go through the healing process. As always, if I can help you, please reach out to me. You can find me on my social channels at beatanxiety.me on Instagram and Twitter. And then obviously you can find me on my website at beatanxiety.me. And again, I'd love to help you. Message me, send me an email or message me if I can help. So anyway, thank you for listening to this podcast, and I look forward to another one real soon. Take care, guys. God bless. Bye.